where you can find one of our Mark's sculpture, and you can also find Eddie's poetry at the very end before you hit the next creek and then the river. And you can also go north of here at El Paso Street, and you can see Diana Kersey's artwork, plenty of artwork in between. But this is a lower half, or the southern half or portion of the creek project. So again, I encourage you to go north and check out the entire park. That starts up behind Fox Tech High School. So to get started, I do have all of my notes here in my hand, but I made a little intro or bio for each of the artists here, just to give us some idea about them, but it's not their complete bios. So if I do miss something that's important to you, please feel free to mention it. This is gonna be a pretty casual conversation. And so I have some questions for the whole group, and then also some individual questions for each of the artists. But if there's something that you think of or comes to mind, please feel free to mention it. Just raise your hand. And we're gonna share this mic. I'll pass it. But Diana Kersey is a ceramic artist with an MFA from Washington State University who creates textural, hand-built public artworks inspired by historical and ecological narratives. Her larger-than-life ceramic crayfish, located at El Paso Street, is a collective memory shared and inspired by the San Antonio community. Rikkianne Van Kirk often draws inspiration from found materials and poetic storytelling. Her canopy here that we are sitting under is called A Place of Origins, and it honors both local architecture and some of our native birds seen along the creek, using abstract herons and hand-sewn fabric to create a meditative space here at Mustard Seed Plaza. Mark Reigelman is a nationally recognized public artist who creates site-specific installations that often merge function and metaphor. His sculpture, Falling Water, captures and filters runoff from the I-35 overpass and embodies both environmental stewardship and the human hand in shaping our shared landscape. Eduardo Vega is an educator, spoken word artist, and our current City of San Antonio Poet Laureate who celebrates bilingualism, identity, and place. His poems, etched at San Pedro Creek, reflect the endearing presence of flora, fauna, and culture along the waterway and written in a blend of English and Spanish that speaks to the voices of our community. Thank you all for being able to make it today. There are a couple of other artists that are on this stretch that I do want to mention who couldn't make it today, but I do want to acknowledge them because it's unavoidable that you will come into contact with their artwork here. So Elizabeth Carrington, whose artwork is just up here, collages imagery to create bold, uplifting artworks. Her installation, The Spirit of San Pedro Creek, reflects the vibrancy of San Antonio's people, cultures, and wildlife, and encourages a shared connection to nature. Leticia Huerta, who has the tiles that you can find on the benches here and right behind me. She brings her background in science and visual art to her public installations across the country. And for San Pedro Creek Culture Park, she created a vibrant tiles for benches featuring native Texas wildflowers, celebrating the pollinators that support the local ecosystem and the beauty of the region's natural heritage. So, to get started, a first question for the group, and we'll start down here and work our way. Can you tell us what was your initial or your first response to the invitation to be a part of San Pedro Creek Culture Park? Mark.
So we were talking earlier about the call for my site, which is like under a highway and needed to catch water. And someone said, oof, I saw that and I didn't want to apply for that project at all. But I saw it and I was like, yes, what a weird project. This is exactly what I want to do. So when I saw the call, I knew it was a good fit. I mean, it just kind of matched my interests of like combining industrial design and functionality, concept, narrative, sculpture. So I was very excited to apply to it and even more excited to receive it. Again, it just seemed like a very good fit and it was a good opportunity to like do something that I haven't done with artwork before.
I remember reading about this and like the call for this specific piece, and I had never done public art before. And this was special because it had I had a lot of help. I didn't have to work with like engineers and things like that. They all did that, the park, everybody did that for this specific site. And what I had to do was come up with the story, the illustration for the canopies. It was a wonderful introduction to public art. And I just want to like tell that to young artists that get intimidated when they see stuff like this, like call for arts, for public arts. There are ways and there are specific projects that you can dive into and be just successful at it and get help. So anyway.
When I first moved to town, one of my first jobs was as a ceramic technician for the Southwest School of Art, which was in the Southwest Craft Center, which is now UTSA's art, right? But we used to live off Nogalitos, and so I would walk up this pathway. It was a railroad track, I think, and it was pretty crappy. And so when I got this call and I learned that we were redeveloping this area, I just wanted to be a part of it. So I'm just blown away with how much it's changed.
So a few years ago, I think it was 2016, Don, with the first Riders Along the Creek. Yeah. So Don Mathis organized for a group of writers and poets to walk along the creek in anticipation of a great big redevelopment of the entire area. So I got to see this before anything had been. I mean, it was all kind of like in a planning stage. And when we saw the railroad tracks, or we left the railroad tracks, we got to learn the history about the encampments that were here, and General Pershing showed up here, and there was a Chinese section, and there was, the jail where they hang people and everything, that was all part of this. And then there was always that rumor that they were going to want some words along the creek. So I was always looking out for that call, and when that call did come up, it was a little different because the platform for these calls is usually for visual art, and I'm a poet, I'm a writer, so I had to like put my stuff on PDFs and put cool fonts on it or something just to make it look, to give it or to turn it into a JPEG. It was a very different kind of commission for me. Usually people just say, write me a poem because it's the celebration and write about that. This was a little different. I came and walked the creek one more time after getting the commission to do it. I came and walked one more time as much as I could because it was a hard hat area and whatnot. And tried to absorb things, absorb our native flora, native fauna, to write something in the parameters that were given.
Thank you all so much for that. You can clap. So, as an artist myself, I am always curious about inspiration for shaping public spaces with creativity. And so I want to ask you guys about yours. Rikki, this beautiful canopy is partially inspired by some surrounding architecture, and some of our avian neighbors. Can you tell us a little bit more about those inspirational elements?
So when I was researching through coming down here and then also reading, I found a piece by John Philip Santos called A Creek Tells Its Story, and it really talks about the history of the creek. And it was very visual. There was the imagery in it. He was talking about herons, and herons, actually the Aztec culture society, they called their home a place of herons because they signify a place of origin, or they're an origin story. So San Pedro Creek is a place of origin for San Antonio, for people that lived among the creek when it was, back in at its very beginnings. So I included our herons, I included birds in flight in this center panel, and those are more kind of an abstract. There's actually, when I was down here, when I did the actual walks, it was just gravel when we came down here, and it was just nothing. It was incredible to see the transformation, but I was standing right over there where that first pole is, and I was looking around and I was looking at the architecture, and I wanted to include, kind of a marriage between the natural and man-made around this area. So I just happened to look that way, and if you kind of place yourself over there, you can see the top of Ruby City and the architecture of the roof, and it actually looks like a bird in flight. So there's like 3 kind of crude little shapes there at the bottom here, and that's actually the roof of Ruby City. So it kind of, includes man-made, includes, the natural habitat, and that was the inspiration came together. So, yeah.
Thank you. Next question is for Diana. Your crayfish sculpture was developed with input from community engagement, and so can you tell us a little bit about how that inspired you to build a 4-foot crawfish?
It's bigger than 4 feet, isn't it? So I forget what event the San Pedro River Authority was putting on, but it was a big family event, and so they let me set up a little booth, and I brought in a bunch of air clay, and I had people just start making things and give me some ideas. I talked about what what my work is about. Usually it's about the ecology of the area, and that we were making something for the trailhead. We want it to be visual. We want it to be like a landmark, and just asking people what their memories are of San Pedro Creek. And I can't tell you how many people have memories of mostly San Pedro Springs at the San Pedro Park and playing with the crawfish. And everybody talked about finding crawfish in the park and playing with them as kids. My wife, I think, dropped crawfish onto riverboat things in San Antonio River. And then people were talking about how when they're walking the creek now, the developed part, they would find little bits of crayfish on the sidewalks because birds hunt them and eat them on the sidewalks. And so it just seemed like a great thing. And then, there's always something in sculpture. I was talking to Mark about it, that if you want to make a good, memorable sculpture, make it good. If you can't make it good, make it big. And if you can't make it big, make it red. So that's what we did.
Thank you, Diana, for your insight. And I have another question now for Mark. So you had a few concepts for your project initially. And can you tell us about how you came to understand that you would be designing a hand?
So how I typically work is there's a lot of back and forth with project partners and community members and things like that. But my site, as being site specific, is very informed by the site parameters, site history, site details. So when I first went to the site, so I did the hand. If you haven't been down there, I know it's a hike on a hot day. It is the site. If you go there, don't even look at the artwork. Just close your eyes under the bridge. It is a really surreal experience, right? The cars above have this like this wonderful like heartbeat. And then you hear the creek kind of like bubbling down below. You hear birds going through. It's like, it is a really wonderful experience. And so you have the highway above, you have the creek below, and then you have this pedestrian walkway in the middle. So the kind of the human form is the thing that kind of connects these two spaces. And there's also a lot of site parameters that the architect and engineers provided, right? This thing needs to catch water. So it has to have like a large surface up above. We decided that we want it to redirect, filter and redirect, so there's some logistics there. So as I'm doing this research, parameters are being set up for the artwork, right? I'm not engaging in any of them. I'm just like, okay, so this has to happen, this has to happen. So kind of a form starts emerging from that, right? Like large form on top, kind of spindly thing support on the bottom. And I also realized that I wanted it to be natural in some way. So I was looking at flowers, right? Flowers naturally catch water, and their stems would be a good way to redirect water to another location. So I was exploring these ideas. I knew it didn't want to have like a high polished finish. It didn't want to be a bright color. And so I developed a handful of concepts that seemed to fit the functional parameters and have some symbolism and meaning. And so I presented a handful of concepts to the community. And most people come up and they'll be like, definitely the hand, definitely. And that was kind of my feeling as well. Oh yeah, you were at that meeting. And that was my feeling as well. I've always tended to stay away from the human form. You won't see it in any of my works. That was unique for me. But it also felt like it was a strong symbol of kind of encouraging folks to be thoughtful about the environment in a subtle way. So there was a lot of feedback from community that helped guide the direction. The site itself helped guide the direction, and then from there it was just a lot of design development to figure out the scale, the angle, materiality, fabricability, and all those other fun details.
Thank you. So Mark, you talked a little bit about this, how you haven't made, or you usually stay away from human form. That made me think about, everyone here has created an artwork that we can see here that didn't exist before, or might be presented like poetry in a way that you haven't displayed your artwork before. And so I'm thinking about placement now, and the site. So back to Mark. And you've now shared your concept for falling water a little bit, but I have a little bit of questions that I'll read off, and you've answered some of that, but I'm going to go ahead. But can you tell us what type of research went into fulfilling the scope, and how this project and the location differ from past projects?
So typically my process is heavy site research. So I speak with historians, I speak with community members, there's a lot of that. And I do that because almost every project I have, I'm coming from another city to a city that I don't know, in meeting people that I don't know, and kind of engaging in a culture that I'm not familiar with. So it's a big kind of educational component on my part. So I do a lot of that site history. This project was unique because there were so many site variables and site constraints that was really limited to what that form could look like, and it really became a byproduct of that. Primarily a byproduct of the functionality, right? It really needed to do this one thing, and it needed to do it well. And when the hand was kind of discovered by accident, I was thinking mostly about flowers, and I started looking up kind of ancient symbolism. And there was kind of an ancient Indian hand that talked about the importance of purifying, right? Like, I think specifically purifying water, and this idea of offering and receiving. And so, as I delved deeper into that research, I found that it was like a symbol that you could find throughout culture, throughout the world, and it seemed something that was very, like a symbol that was very potent, something that was very accessible, and something that would kind of address the function, but also be a meaningful experience for someone visiting the site. I also didn't want the work to overpower the site elements, right? So Corten steel kind of darkens, it blends into the site. I really wanted the creek and the flowers around it to play a more prominent visual role, and then at a second glance you might notice this hand kind of rising up through the earth.
Great. Yeah, I agree. I think if you guys go and visit the hand, if you haven't seen the sculpture yet, we all encourage you to go check it out. Today, you're